Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next session of Utah Wing's Communications Virtual Conference. I send the greetings of the Wing Communications staff. They wanted me to let you know that they are appreciative that you are attending these, and also appreciation to those who are presenting tonight. Just some housekeeping. If you have questions or problems, go ahead and enter something into the Q&A section. I will see that and I can respond to that. I'm going to turn the time over to Lieutenant Colonel James Stewart. He is the Utah Wing Director of Emergency Services, and he will introduce our presenter tonight. Colonel Stewart.
Good evening, Utah Wing members. It's great to be with you this evening, and it's an honor and pleasure for me to introduce my friend Captain Paul Jensen. There's a little story behind how Paul showed up in Civil Air Patrol, which traces back to a cool winter morning on a Sunday in 2010 when I bumped into somebody at church that I didn't know, and quickly in our conversation found out that we both were pilots. I asked Paul at the time if he knew anything about Civil Air Patrol, and he said no. So I said, come and see. So he came, and he saw, and he stayed. Paul has held many positions of responsibility in both Phantom Squadron and the wing level. Currently, he serves as the Deputy Commander for Seniors in the Phantom Composite Squadron in Spanish Fork. Paul is a an instrument-rated commercial pilot. He is somewhat of an aviation enthusiast in that he owns his own plane, which you can land most anywhere, and he's tried a few places. Used to be a horse rider, but we'll leave that for another evening. So without further ado, thank you, Paul, for speaking to us tonight about the one secret everyone needs to know about the Becker. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Glad to be here tonight. As Jim said, the topic is the one secret everyone needs to know about Becker. There are many, but there is one in particular that you absolutely must know. Now, to clear the air a little, I am not a Becker expert. I don't pretend to be, and if your questions dig too deep, you'll get into the I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about area with me. Also, I'm not a PowerPoint person, so when I was putting this thing together, I realized when I got done that I had used a half a dozen different styles, so you're going to get a lot of diversity tonight. So with that being said, we'll jump right into what I learned about Becker. The first question is, why am I giving this presentation? I made the mistake of answering a phone. We had an air crew come in, they landed, they called, and they said, Paul, we're out looking for the ELT. How in the world do you change channels to find the correct frequency? And I said, well, I don't know. They were there when I flew the week before. I have to come down and look. So I went down and turned the Becker on our 490 aircraft, and this is what I found on the memory page. And I thought, you know, none of those look particularly familiar. And so I called Mike Collette and said, hey, Mike, I'm sending you this picture. I said, this is what's in the Becker. Which of those frequencies should be there and which ones shouldn't? And Mike said, none of them should be there. And so I realized that somebody had gone in and messed up all the frequencies. And so as I started looking at it, I came to the one big secret everybody needs to know, and that is simply this: randomly punching buttons and twisting dials in frustration to select frequencies has the same probability of success as pulling earbuds out of your pocket and having it untangle itself. I have used both methods. I have done the random punching buttons and twisting dials trying to find frequencies on the Becker, and it's been a frustrating experience. I have also frequently pulled the earplugs out of my pocket, and they never untangle themselves. It's quite a process. So if you learn nothing else tonight, other than this one rule, that would be it. Do not randomly punch buttons and twist dials trying to find frequencies, because I will guarantee you, you will find yourself wrecking all of the frequencies that are in the Becker, and it'll end up being the way it is. So who's the author's quote? It was me, and the quote came from the deep from the pit of personal experience. And I do remember being frustrated in the air, couldn't get the right frequency, and twisting all the dials, trying to hope that, or hoping that I would actually end up with what I was looking for. And it did not happen. Now, which Beckers in which aircraft? The Rhotheta RT600 is the newest one, and that we have that in 232 Charlie Papa, 490 Charlie Papa, and 259 Charlie Papa. And that's the aircraft in Ogden, Spanish Fork, and down in St. George. Now the Becker 517, which is very similar, but some of the functions vary a little, are in 358 Charlie Papa. I believe that's in Salt Lake, and 753 Charlie Papa, which is getting a new engine, so I'm not sure where it's at. 28 Kilo is our oldest aircraft, and that has the old electronics in it, which I'm not going to address tonight, but basically it's got the little horizontal display, and there's a needle that moves back and forth. And for you who are pilots, it works like a VOR. Just follow the needle and get it centered. So that's for you who fly these different aircraft, you know which Becker you're dealing with. Okay, secret number 2, how to screw up the frequencies. Very simple. All you do, all it takes is cranking the page knob up in the upper right-hand corner to the memory page or the frequency page. Then you start cranking the 2 bottom knobs, and whatever frequency it's sitting on is going to be screwed up, because the left knob does the megahertz and the right knob does the kilohertz, kilo whatever. Anyway, it screws it up. Then if you get really brave and you start twisting the squelch button, that'll change it to new frequencies. Then if you go back to the bottom 2 buttons, start playing around with them, you've screwed that one up. And so it only takes a minute or 2 to screw all 5 frequencies up and not even know what you're doing. So please don't do that. And again, that goes back to the main big secret of how to of the Becker, and that is just don't do it. Don't go out cranking knobs and pushing things around. Okay, secret 3, how to actually change the frequencies. Now, this is the way you do it on the Rhotheta RT600, not on the Becker 517. But it's very simple. Just twist this knob in the lower left-hand corner, and then the illustration now on the right shows up in the corner and shows what frequency you're on. So you can twist that knob back and forth, and it's very simple. Now, one of the things that I learned that was really fascinating is secret number 4. What are the little dotty things along the bottom? As you see next to the red arrow, there's a series of 5 dots or dashes, then 3 dashes, and then 7 dashes. And those correspond with the available frequencies on this particular Becker. So the first 5 that the arrow is pointing to are the adjustable frequencies that I showed you earlier, that you can screw up just by getting on the wrong page and playing with the buttons. Now, all of the frequencies in the set of 3 and the set of 7 are non-changeable frequencies. And you'll notice on the middle set, you've got the standard emergency frequency of 121.5, and you also have the digital frequency of 25. Is it digital? Whatever, 243.0. Those are fixed, as well as the marine. So you cannot change those, nor can you change the SARSAT frequencies. And so you see the little pyramid, upside down pyramid next to the arrow tells you which frequency you are on. And so as you'll notice now, what I've listed here are the frequencies that I put into 490 Charlie Papa. I don't know if they're still there. They were when I put them there, but you'll notice that I put the practice frequency on the first dash on the set of 5s, but you can also, and so you could actually set all 5 of those to the practice frequency, since that's generally the only one we use that's not 121.5, unless we do have a specific new or digital frequency that we need to get to. So you can scroll through all 13 channels, but you can only change the top 5 or that's listed here. Now, number 5, what is the second way to change the frequencies? Well, I'm not going to tell you. Secret number 3 is too easy to mess up the frequencies. Just joking. Number 5, the second way to change the frequencies, or how to see all your changeable frequencies, or how to fix frequencies that are screwed up, is secret number 5. And I've actually already explained it, but number 1 is you twist the page dial, which is the upper right hand dial, and you take it to the frequency or the memory page. This shows your auxiliary frequency and your memory 1 through 4. Then you twist the squelch knob, which is the upper left hand knob, and you dial to rotate through the frequencies, and you leave the or you use the bottom 2 to adjust the frequency. And I already tried to tell you what is megahertz and kilowatts, or well, I'm not much in that direction, but I think that's fairly accurate. So you use those to change the 2 to make it whatever you want. So that secret 5 is actually how you do change that. Now, secret number 6 is listening to the Becker. Basically, you push the auxiliary button on the G1000, or you can also monitor on your aviation radio. I've got a really nice picture of the aux button, sort of. Unfortunately, I called down to Ed Stratford, who was flying the 202, which is the 172 at the G1000, and asked him if he'd take a picture of the audio panel on that side, or on the observer side, or the right seat, and get me a picture of the aux button on there. But it turns out the 202 doesn't have quite the same layout, so I wasn't able to get a picture of it. But if you've ever wondered how you listen to the Becker through your headset, it's you punch that auxiliary button right next to the Becker. Now, keep in mind, all the G1000s, the newer they are, the different, they do lay them out different, so that may not always be the case. And but if you can't, then just put it in on your Comm 2 and listen to it through the aviation radios. Secret number 7. This is how you change frequencies on the Becker, as I call it. This is the 517. And again, it's very easy. And that is, you power it up, and when you power up the 517, you only have a few seconds to actually choose which mode you're going to be in, whether it's emergency or training. And so you use the page dial, which is the upper right hand dial. So when you first turn this Becker on, you've got your hand up on that upper right hand dial, and once this comes up, you switch. Do you want emergency or do you want training? And change it to that, and then just sit, and it'll go into that mode automatically. Very simple. Becker, or excuse me, secret number 8, using the Becker is a dark and mysterious art and it's sort of science. Sometimes watching the Becker and trying to discern where the signal is coming from will make you feel like you're divining secrets from the entrails in the bottom of a bowl. It can be very challenging. I remember once I got a call from the Spanish Fork Airport telling me there was an ELT that was going off, and they thought it was at the airport. I just happened to have an Elper in my truck, which is unusual because normally I didn't. But the Elper is the ground Becker, for lack of a better term, but it's an antenna that's got a display, and basically you hone in and get the needle in the middle, and that'll tell you where the ELT signal is coming from. But when you're doing that in an environment with a lot of hangars, that signal is bouncing all over the place. And so I was literally all over that airport trying to determine which of the signals were accurate and which ones were bouncing off of hangars. And I finally isolated it down one taxiway, and it turns out that a fellow was building an airplane in his hangar, had it 98% complete, was charging the battery so he could go start flying it, and did not have it insured. The battery overnight ignited, burned up the airplane. And then so they drug the airplane out on the hangar, or on the tarmac of the taxiway, and basically left it there. And the one thing that survived the burnout was the ELT, and so it was still going. But it took me probably an hour to walking around trying to figure out which of those signals was actually accurate. Now there's another experience. Ray Rollins and I, when COVID first hit, there was an ELT that there was a report. This was at night. They were getting reports. They said that it was somewhere in the Salt Lake area. So Ray and I went up, or Ray was the pilot, I was the observer, and we took off, and the ball indicating on the, you'll notice there next to 7.2, that ball is what you're trying to follow. And it was just all over the place, and it appeared that the stronger signals were coming from the south, but the farther south we went, the lower the signal, and the balls were just going all over the place. So we decided, since that wasn't working, we'd turn around and head north, and was just kind of guessing, because there was no real consistent there's no real consistent area in which we were getting an indication. And but once we got up in the Salt Lake Valley, we started getting longer signals, and the farther north we got, the better the signal. And it kind of indicated that it was right in the flight path of all the commercial traffic coming into the Salt Lake International. And so we finally were able to find it in a building probably 2 or 3 miles south of the Salt Lake International. But because it was in a building, and because of its location, it was giving a lot of false signals. And that's why I say it's not like you get this solid indication of where you're going. You have to learn how to really get a sense of the way the Becker works, and where the signal's coming from. So you've almost found it. Now what do we do? Okay, signals can deviate a lot while you're searching, and so here's what you're looking for. If the signal strength is low, or the audio is quiet, you may have to open the squelch to hear it better. And the position error balls, which are the 2 balls that have the openness in them, if they're bouncing all over the place, then you know your signal's very weak, and that's when you're going to be searching. But when you have a pretty good idea of where you're headed, then you get a stronger signal strength. So that bar on the left, that starts going up, showing that you're getting a better signal, and you're going to hear it in your headset will get louder. and the error balls, I'm not sure that's the official word, that's what I call them, will start settling in around the solid ball, which should show you where the ELT is coming from. So those are the indicators you're looking for. And once you've found it, then what do you do? And here's what you need to memorize. Memorize range, enter, enter, because this will lay down a waypoint for you. And here's the two buttons you want to push. You push the range button in and then enter, enter. And the way you do that is, or when you do that, so when you hit the range, enter, enter, then it'll bring up the lat long on your MFD and add a waypoint to the MFD. But you have to make sure you hit the range and then do two good solid enter, enter, and that's what lays the waypoint down. It'll also put the lat long so you can take a moment and write it down. So you want to have your whatever you're taking notes on so that you can write down the waypoint name and the lat long on it. Now, I found out from sad experience that if you are close to a controlled airspace, the G1000 asks a question before you get to the second enter. And it wants to know what you want to do about the airspace. So you have to answer that question too. So you have to add range, enter, then you have to use the big and small knob to answer the question, then you do the last enter. If you don't do it, if you just go range, enter, enter when you're close to, say, like you're just outside of B-class airspace, it'll wipe out your waypoint and your lat long, so you'll have to go back and do it again. So again, all you got to do, range, enter, enter, and it's going to lay down that waypoint. So we're on the last now that you find it. What else? You'll notice we've upgraded our Cap airplane on this illustration. So if you're coming in from the south looking for this target, when you hit the X and the ball swings around, that's when you hit the range, enter, enter. You lay a waypoint down on that red X or wherever it's at. Then the pilot will come up and swing around and come this way or that. And there's no real prescribed way to do it. You just want to make sure that you do come in from several angles. Now, I've seen some engineers who come up from really impressive but complex ways to do it. I'm just a simple guy. All you need to do is come in from different angles, get 3 or 4 good solid readings so that you have a cluster of waypoints and lat longs that you can give to a ground team. And so once you've done this, you've pretty well gone through the process. You radio in your results, and that's what it's all about. Now, this is secrets 9 through 32, which is everything else. And I'm going to show a video that it's put out by the Washington wing. Some squadron in Seattle put this together, and it's the best video I've seen on how to use the Becker or the Rhotheta. And it's my opinion that everyone who is going to use an ELT would be well served by watching this. I think it's about a 10-minute long video before you go up and do it. So we're going to start this video now, and you'll be able to get a real run through from beginning to end on working with this Becker.
Captain Jensen, did you share your audio when you started this?
Share it how?
When you go to share the presentation, you have to tell it you want to share the computer audio also. Otherwise, they're not going to hear a word.
All righty. Well, how do I do that?
You'll have to stop sharing right now. And then when you go to share, you have to stop sharing your screen. And then when you go to share that screen again, there's an option just to the top left that says include computer audio.
Okay, click it again. Screen 2. All right, is everybody seeing the right thing?
Hold on. I'll have to send it to them. There we go. Okay, they should be able to now.
All right.
Greetings. My name is Lieutenant Joshua Edwards. I'm the Emergency Services Officer of the Seattle Composite Squadron of the Washington Wing. Today we'll be talking about the Becker 517 RT600. It's one of two variants of the Becker direction finder that's available in the Washington Wing. This video focuses on the basic uses and features of the Becker 517. For more information, please consult the Becker manual that's in the aircraft or available online, and of course the aircrew checklist. Let's begin with some basics of operation. To turn the Becker on, first turn on the mission master on the right-hand panel. Then turn the unit itself on. It will go through its startup and self-test process. If you don't see the option to choose between training and emergency, you'll know that you're using the RT600 version. Now let's take a tour of some of the basic features and settings of the Becker 517. In the top right-hand corner is the page knob. This allows us to enter and select from different frequencies that are user stored. On other versions of the Becker, this has other purposes as well that are not available here. In the bottom right-hand corner is the frequency selector. We can choose from all the different frequencies that are available and pre-programmed into this Becker 517. If we want to listen to an ELT in flight, we can select the Becker as a source on the audio panel and then adjust the volume with the knob in the bottom left-hand corner. The knob in the top left-hand corner allows us to change the squelch. Now let's take a look at the display and the information presented. LS stands for loss of signal. If the ELT signal is lost, the Becker begins counting the minutes and seconds since the last time a clean signal was received. Frequency tells us what frequency we're currently listening on for ELTs. The prominent display in the middle tells us a relative bearing towards the signal source. This is a relative bearing based on the aircraft's heading and is not a magnetic heading. In this case, 34 degrees to the right would take us towards the source of the signal. The black dot is the direction towards that source of the signal, whereas the two semi-filled circles on either sides are the margin or the spread or the quality of the signal source. In this case, where we have a very close margin, we know that there's a very high probability that that's the direction to go. In areas of higher terrain or where the ELT may be located inside a building, we'll know that there's probably a wider margin for error. The volume tells us how strong the volume is and the squelch setting, whereas in the middle we see the noise to squelch ratio. If you'd like to adjust the brightness of the display, first touch the dim button in the top right and then use the page knob to adjust the brightness to the desired setting. Now let's take a look at entering and selecting frequencies for searches. The page knob in the top right-hand corner will bring us into this screen. Here we can select from frequencies which have been stored by users or enter one of our own. We can select a frequency using the top left-hand knob, or we can enter a frequency of our own choice by using megahertz on the bottom left-hand knob and kilohertz on the bottom right-hand knob. If we want to see all the frequencies that are available on this Becker 517, then from the main screen, we're going to use the bottom right-hand knob, which will bring us to this screen. Here we can choose between frequencies that have been stored by users or those that have been pre-programmed in at the factory, like 1215, 156.8 for maritime, 243 for military ELTs, or the 406 frequency band for COSBAS SARSAT. Here we can select individual frequencies or COSBAS SARSAT scan mode, which will look across all the different 406 frequencies, as well as offering options to decode the data blocks from those beacons. This is particularly useful so you can ensure you're tracking the correct beacon. Now let's take a look at what happens as we actually track a signal transmission. In this scenario, we're actually orbiting in a left-hand turn the signal source. We can see that we have a very strong signal strength on the left-hand side. There is a slight delay, as you'll note, as we continue to turn for the updated bearings to that signal strength because the Becker is using an averaging system. Of course, you would be feeding your updated bearings to the mission pilot the whole time here. But you can see that we have very strong margins around the black dot, which tells us that we have a very high probability that that direction or that bearing would take us directly to the signal source. In this scenario, we're actually going to pass over the source of an ELT transmission. When we do so, we actually want to mark that location using a physical landmark outside the aircraft so that we can come back and investigate further. When we pass over it, we'll actually see the bearing flip to behind the aircraft. And at this point, we want to yell mark and have the scanner or someone looking outside the aircraft provide a physical landmark so that we can come back for another pass. Now let's take a look at using the squelch in a loss of signal situation. We can see that we've lost the ELT for the last 17 seconds and no bearing is being shown. We could use the rep button in the top right to actually give us the last bearing to the source of the transmission. But in this case, we notice that the squelch is actually set above the signal to noise ratio. So we're going to adjust the squelch a little bit, and we'll notice that once again, we're picking up the transmission, and we can see that the margin knobs are giving us a pretty strong source to the signal. So we know that there's a pretty good fix towards that ELT location. Hopefully, this video has helped you better understand using the Becker 517 direction finder. Good luck and semper vigilance.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, our secret number 9 is watching this every time you're going to go out and use the Becker. It's excellent. As you can see, it gives a real good summary of how to use it in a way that is very effective and efficient. And it's short, so it's not going to take you a lot of time to review it. Now, the really big secret, and this is the secret that is disrupting $1 billion industry, which actually isn't the case, but I've always wanted to say that. You can become a qualified Becker operator really fast, but you can only become a competent Becker operator with lots of consistent experience, both in training and in actual search and rescue. I would encourage you to invest the time to use the Becker enough that you're not feeling like you don't know what you're doing when you're up looking for an ELT, particularly if you are in a live ELT search. So that comes to the end of this presentation. Is there any questions?
I have not seen any questions come up. You must have explained this perfectly well.
Everybody's stunned into silence, one or the other. Well, I appreciate the chance to share what little bit I've learned about the Becker. I hope this has been informational for you. You've gotten something out of it. If we all take this information and apply it, we will really be good, competent observers and pilots as we're out looking for ELTs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain Jensen. Appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance tonight. And just a reminder that our next virtual communications training conference session will be on March the 25th. The subject will be the Technosonic aircraft radio, and our presenter will be Lieutenant Colonel Rand Woodward. He is the Rocky Mountain Region Director of Operations. Thank you very much, and this session has been recorded and will be available if you go back to this link tomorrow. Oh, we have a question that just came up. Oh, 2 questions. Can you unmute yourself, Captain Jensen? There's 2 questions for you that just came up. One is, yes. How do we find that video? You didn't give a reference for it.
I will send it to somebody.
Okay. If you'll send it to me, I will get it to the communications team, and we'll get it out to the wing. Okay. And the second question is, can you track a VOR with the Becker?
No.
Okay.
Well, I guess you could if the VOR was the same frequency you put in, but I'm not much of a. I'm not technically able to say, well, yes, you can put a VOR frequency in the Becker because you do have the 5 frequencies.
Right.
So if you got the same frequency in, theoretically you should. Whether you can do it or not, I've never tried. I have no idea why you would want to.
Good point. Okay. So if you want to watch this video again, this will be available at the same link that you came to watch this tonight going forward. So thank you very much and have a great evening.